Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you're in. I don't even know anymore what time zone I am in, so don't ask me. My name is Barbara With, and this is my World Peace Tour Diary number 7, coming to you from Taos, New Mexico. On this episode of my World Peace Tour Diaries, there's two things that I want to talk about this afternoon here in this beautiful suite in this lovely hotel in Taos, New Mexico. The first thing I want to do is I want to talk about what happened at the Science of Consciousness conference, because a lot of stuff went down in that week. I was exhausted. So much happened. And kind of catch you up on how we got there. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about what we've been calling timeline healing. And with Einstein and the party, what timeline healing refers to is when concurrent lives, otherwise known as past lives, start bleeding through in this life, in this consciousness, how we integrate them. And I have a very personal story of my own of a timeline healing that centers around this very room that I'm sitting in and this very resort that I'm staying at. So where we last left off, I was in Bucharest with my dear friend, Carmen Mira. We had an excellent 2 days over the eclipse and the new moon. We actually did a impromptu channeling that night in the park that I cannot pronounce. Hello everyone. It is this beautiful eclipse on April 8th, 2024. And what this means is that there is this incredible unification that's happening within. It's like all the pieces of us, not just from this life, but from other lives, are coming together, and we have this enormous opportunity to bring them together, heal them all, heal our other timelines. So those past lives, we call them concurrent, which means they're going on simultaneously, but you're in a different space-time, in a different DNA body, but they're all rooted in the source, in your compilation of consciousness. And this is our opportunity to heal those timelines. And this eclipse is bringing that up. So if you're feeling those traumatized lives, it's hard, it's not fun, but we can breathe through it, we can integrate it, and most of all, we don't want that deep emotion to marry to any lower level thinking, to where it's depressive or projecting lower realities. We want to feel it and marry it to those high level super conscious lives. And what you'll see is synchronicity. Synchronicity everywhere, in messages, in music, in people that you meet who affirm this incredible work that we're doing. Lastly, don't underestimate the personal work and how it relates to the macrocosm of world peace. It has to start with us individually. So yes, it's hard work sometimes. It might not look like you're having an effect on the rest of the big world, but we are. It's absolutely essential. So here's to all of you. Carmen and I send all of our love to you, and you'll be hearing more from me and us together. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb.
So when I was in Bucharest this year with Carmen, she and I did an Einstein channel for our future, because things are afoot with Einstein and the party and me and this world tour. And everything that I have learned since I left home last October is just exponentially building on itself. The one thing that I've learned is that people want to talk about peace. They want to know what they can do to make peace. And more people in the world are willing to do those things. When we started this in 1993, world peace was a really pleasant idea, but nobody was going to lift a finger in their own shadow work as a way to create world peace back then. not many people, but today, yes, people not only get the energy work, they understand that it has to start here. Now, all they need is a system that is foolproof, simple, and self-regulating. And that's what conflict revolution is. So that's what I'm finding out on the world tour. So anyway, we had a fabulous time in Bucharest, and I flew back to the United States, where I promptly slept for a week. Then I got in the car in Georgia and I drove all the way to Tucson. It took me 3 days. And I swear to God, now I've been traveling since I was 17. I know how to travel. And I checked the weather and it was clear sailing. Even Debbie checked the weather and it was clear sailing. But as soon as I got almost out of Louisiana, from there all the way to New Mexico, it was flash flood warnings with torrential downpours for all day long. And so it was a white knuckle kind of 3-day drive, but I got to Tucson and I got to the resort, the beautiful resort, to go to this conference, the Science of Consciousness, put on by the University of Tucson, Arizona. And this is the 30th year that they've done this. And I was, first of all, shocked that they picked me even to do the lowest of the low kind of presentations. It was called a poster presentation, where you just made a poster and you stood there and talked about it while we were all in this room together. I called it the RV park of the conference. It was a great time. It was absolutely a great time. And here are some things that were my takeaways from that conference. First and foremost, I was able to meet Deepak Chopra and give him an Einstein book. So here's how it went down. I waited until the very end and I got on the end of the line, and he's like tired of taking selfies with everybody. He gets to me and I thrust him the book and I say, I've been impelled to give you this book and tell you to read it. And he took the book, started looking at it, and I started to say, it's just a little book, it won't take long. And he looked at me right in the eye and he said, I will read it. So if you know me and my work, this is huge, as they say in Pretty Woman. Huge, huge. Another thing was, I saw a woman named Tanya Luhrmann, who is an anthropologist from Stanford. She has a book out about the afterlife, and she studied people who hear voices. You can look up her work. She was looking for and lamenting that she did not have somebody who heard voices in the style of maybe Joan of Arc, or in some big fashion, like save the world sort of fashion. So I wasn't able to meet her, but I gave her a copy of Diaries of a Psychic Sorority through the front desk. That would be phenomenal if there was an anthropologist who wanted to study whatever the heck has been going on with me my whole life, that has gotten me to the Science of Consciousness conference in Tucson, Arizona in 2024. So I've been asked to speak at a conference called The Doorway to the Future. And this is Thomas Campbell, who is a renowned physicist and the author of My Big Theory of Everything. He does groundbreaking work when it comes to the nature of consciousness. I sat with one of his representatives for about an hour at the table, and I said, tell me his big theory of everything. Well, Thomas Campbell is the actual mathematician, physicist who does the actual work that scientists do, not like me, I talk to dead people, but he actually does the work. So when it was explained what his big theory of everything was, I said, that is this. That is basically explain scientifically how our map of human consciousness and unified field. Anyway, we decided that I had to come and speak, because if it is so, and we both agreed that it possibly could be that they're so copacetic, after I explained my part too, that it would be Thomas Campbell who is then the one who proves mathematically what Einstein has delivered through us. And Einstein has always said to me that this is not about the math for him, but he feels like these maps will boom, 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 start to explode open the mathematicians' minds and allow someone to do the math. Now, I'm not saying Einstein influenced Thomas Campbell, but what are the odds, really? So that was very exciting, very exciting. And the last person that I did not get to meet, but I'm going to follow up with and send him a book, is a man named Stuart Hameroff. And he is the director of the Science of Consciousness Center and the department at the University of Arizona, Tucson, and the co-director of this conference they've been doing for 30 years. What I'm going to do is send him a letter. Now, just as somebody who is not a scientist and not super left brain, although I do have left brain, coming more from a right brain perspective, intuitive arts, I want you to, as scientists, study this. Let me come and present it to you, and then study it and tell me what you think it is, considering the whole story of who I am, that I'm not a scientist. You tell me what that is. More importantly than all of that, as I sat there with this incredible energy of extremely left brain scientists working on what is consciousness and talking about it everywhere, generating the energy, just fomenting up this high powered intellectual conversation that was just driving everyone into kind of a weird scientific froth. As I listened, I thought, no one is talking about what to do with consciousness. No one is talking about how to channel consciousness. There were smatterings of people who were talking about ethics and psychologists, but no one was talking about the importance of world peace in the scientific community. So here I insert this unified field theory, wink, wink, nod, nod, as an introduction to conflict revolution. Because remember, my mission is that I am looking for the participation of the willing to take part in a nonviolent worldwide action to end the age of war. It is the ultimate peace movement. You don't need to gather on street corners. You don't need to be in a group of people. You need to be in charge of your own domain as per this way that Einstein has explained and that we have tested through the decades to prove to be true. You have to be willing to be your own subject, your own lab rat. So I see all these left brain scientists running around microscopically and macroscopically, I'm going to challenge you to start with yourself in this study of human consciousness and how it relates to world peace that we have to make starting within ourselves. And I want to challenge you. How many of you scientists will do this on yourself? On yourself, not something outside yourself. Be your own lab rat. So that's what I'm going to say to Stuart. And the next year's conference is in Barcelona, which I will be attending. And hopefully, I'm going to ask them to give me an hour. Don't increment me up to 20 more minutes. See this whole beautiful map and the whole presentation of the whole story, and then tell me what you think. Let's talk about it. So that was incredibly exciting because when I did bring up conflict and world peace and a scientific solution, so to speak, to it, people lit up. People just really lit up. It doesn't matter if they were astrophysicists or psychologists or Rumi poet masters, they all lit up. So that's where we are. I also met a man named James Gruhl. He's from MIT, and he had the poster behind me, and we ended up talking and talking and talking. And he said, keep going, you're on to something. And he had come up with a theory. He said, this is why the AI people don't like him, because he's come up with this formula for why AI will never be able to steal your soul. And then I also met someone from the California Institute for Human Sciences. And again, I'm going to contact them and suggest, let me come and present. Let's see what it does. Let's see the conversation that then ensues. So it was an extremely, extremely exciting time. I met so many wonderful people, had great conversations, and have a really clear direction of the next steps forward for this whole wild and crazy world peace tour, world peace one person at a time, starting with self. On the subject of the timeline healing, first of all, just basically to give you an idea of what this means, I'm going to put up this map, and this is what you see on the left side of the screen. You see there's my life, Barbara With. In that life, the string is spinning, the source, the gravitational wave comes out of the source and moves up and creates the lens, and there's my DNA space-time body being Barbara With in this 2024, and the string continues on into the heavens until it meets up with the Earth's electromagnetic field and gets swept back down through the North Pole, where it crosses the event horizon of the black hole that's in the center of the planet, goes down to the center, and begins again. Compassion impels energy to create consciousness that steps out of the nothing and into the something and creates a compilation of consciousness, from which this gravitational wave then explodes and makes its way to the surface of the planet to create the physical body that's then projecting and perceiving all of that magnificent mathematics of creating the physical world. But that gravitational wave continues on into the heavens until it meets up with the Earth's electromagnetic field and gets swept back down into the North Pole, only to begin again. Okay, you get the idea. So that string is spinning at the speed of light squared, and it's really the lens that's slowing that string down and separating everything out like a prism into the physical world. Now, on the right side, you see another string. It's still coming out of my compilation of consciousness in the source, but it's going to a different space-time body, in a different space-time, on a different part of the planet. But it's operating in exactly the same way. And that string too goes out into the heavens until it reaches the edge of the Earth's electromagnetic field. And it goes back down into the North Pole, back down into the center, only to begin again at the speed of light squared. So where you see them coming down together into the black hole, past the event horizon of the North Pole, all the thoughts, feelings, senses, experiences, all the compilations in that life in 900 Ireland is now one with the nothingness, and it's getting picked up by the compilation that is at the root of Barbara With, and it's traveling up that wave as if those thoughts, feelings, and senses and that emotion, intuition, and intellect were mine, but actually it's bleeding through from that concurrent life, formerly known as past lives. And it's bleeding up into my intellect and into my emotion and my intuition. This is what it means when we say that timelines are merging, that I am experiencing the experiences of that other lifetime that originates within me too. I had a very profound experience healing one of these lifetimes, and it really began when I decided to take Imagining Einstein out into the world. And it was precipitated by the fact that my cousin Amy was brutally murdered by the father of one of her children in a parking lot. He had a weapon that he used and threw down a fake note, got his daughter, who was in the truck waiting, and went shopping at Pottery Barn. So the man is in jail, but after she was in afterlife and gone, I was haunted by her screaming, this big bang, and then, what about my children? That's what I heard, and then this wind rushing. So when I left my life to go pursue bringing this message of peace into the world. There was a very deep chasm that took place. I left my husband, who I love very much. I left my home. I moved to another part of the country. I launched this book. I was a mess. And I decided that I was going to feel and breathe my way through this. I was going to use conflict revolution, even in the worst of it, to prove that it works, that it can facilitate a unification of our souls, of our intellects, of our beings. So I spent several years during that time in great distress, and yet still having a very pointed focus that I knew what my mission was. In February of that year, I got an email from a man named Jeffrey Hoppe, and I'd never heard of him, but he had just read my book, Imagining Einstein. This is 2007. And said it was the purest channeling he'd ever read, and would I come and appear at an event in September of 2007 he was throwing with his organization called the Crimson Circle, called the Quantum Leap. Of course I would. I had a lot of trying times between that February and that September, including my promoters dropping out and being sexually assaulted and having to move from the house I just lived in Texas. And so there was a lot of stress and a lot of pain. And this was my time to heal. I felt like I was going to do this. I was going to use conflict revolution to do this. By the time I got to Phoenix, by the time I got to Taos, to this event, I had been through quite a lot. The night before I was going to do this incredible live channel in front of 500,000 people, I had a complete and utter breakdown here in this room that I'm sitting in, because this is the same resort where that event took place, and this is the very same room that I spent during that time. And that breakdown was so important because I sort of, I don't know if this is the right word, but abreacted back. How did I get here? How did I get here? Until I was whatever age I was when I was being abused, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was young, very, very young. And for the first time ever, I didn't see myself from the ceiling looking down like a dissociative in its state. I saw myself in my body looking out. And from that perspective, everything was magical. I was a magical being. I had no question about the power and the magic and the beauty. I could see the angels as if they were real. I could see Einstein like he was just standing there. And when I looked over at my abuser, I saw his child being abused, and that generational abuse, ancestral abuse. And I could have compassion for him. But it was the first time I was able to feel in my body. And I think that's the important part of healing those dissociative disorders, because we dissociate so we don't have to feel. So once we can bring them in through our body and start to move them up that gravitational wave, feeling and breathing, not letting them attach to thought, we can start to empty the basement of all of that crap and start to move that abscess. So here I was in this room, in maybe the deepest state of dark despair I'd been in, really wanting to die, pretty much just wanting to die. Couldn't stop crying. So here's my question. As I was lying in that bed, that bed right over there, what was this part of me, and from 2024, who's sitting in this room now, looking back on that non-physical imprint in this space-time, saying, oh heck, everything's not only going to be okay, it's going to be amazing. And did some of that kind of time travel back when it was 2007 and I was in that place, was that an angel giving me hope? Was that just myself from a different time frame being here in this room? I believe so. And oddly enough, on this trip, I found myself in several places where I had had terrible, terrible times. One was in Texas. Right after I had left, I moved to Texas. I found myself in that same bedroom where I cried myself to sleep and awake for about a year. And I was able to sit on the side of the bed and imagine that person and say, just keep feeling and breathing, honey, because it's going to get a lot better. And you can't even imagine how good it's going to get. That was me to this year being able to say that. And in Paris, too, at the same apartment after my mother died. And I was just so distraught. So finding myself in Taos and being able to reconnect these dots as well is just a phenomenal experience. And I think that the answer, whether you're having a life or I'm having a life where I'm integrating another part of this life, or if I'm integrating another life from 900 Ireland, it's all the same process. We feel and breathe all the emotion. It doesn't matter. We don't have to describe where it came from. We don't have to know what its source is. We just know we feel it and we breathe it and we move it up through. And that brings with it intuition, which is going to impel us to take the next step that's good for the whole system, because that's the voice of compassion within us, driving us to do what's best for the good of the whole. And as that flows further, then we're going to get into the intellect, and we have to figure out what's going on in there, what's programmed, what's pre-programmed, how much emotion am I attaching to these pre-programmed thoughts that are being projected into the lens and creating that reality. How do we break that cycle? And that's what we teach you in conflict revolution. And when we get it, it becomes a new operating system. It becomes knee jerk. So yeah, I still want to lash out at people and project, but for the most part, I have to just sit and feel and breathe and feel and breathe and feel and breathe without thinking. And then I have to monitor my thought processes. Oh, Barb. And I found myself whining through this world peace tour. Oh, poor me. You don't know what it's like to talk to dead people and think you have a unified field theory. Well, yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty phenomenal. So that kind of timeline healing, I think, is what everybody's going through, which is why it's more important than ever to learn this simple process, develop a witness, and start to take control of your own domain. So thanks so much. Subscribe if you like this. I've got some more channeling coming up. I've got some more World Peace Tour diaries, and heaven only knows what's going to happen when it's me and Einstein and the party and all of you. Namaste.